guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustKnowTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome. I'm back, and I wish it was on better terms, you guys. I wish it was on better terms. Let me know if you guys can see me and hear me, because, the internet is not great here in Doha, so let me know. But you guys, I wish I was coming back to you guys with some good news, but I'm coming to you guys with some very sad news. The news today had me like this man here, looking just like this. Woke up out of my bed, checked my phone, because last night, Gabriel Jesus out for 3 weeks. We can handle that. No big deal. We're alive. We're good. Eddie and Nketiah, 3 weeks. No big deal. Woke up this morning. No, not 3 weeks. 3 months. 3 months. And yes, I was looking just like Suarez here because my life felt like it was over. But we're going to talk about it. Everything from where does Arsenal go from here to, how do you guys feel about our title hopes from here? There's a lot of meltdown going on the internet. And so I wanted to get on here and chit chat with you guys about it. So let's go ahead and get it started. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. And let me know how you guys are feeling. All right, moving into it. So you guys, obviously, Gabriel Jesus has been ruled out of the World Cup and also for like the next 3 months for Arsenal, which if my timeline serves me correctly and I can do like basic math skills, that means that he'll be back in, why is this leaving me right now? Like February, early March, something like that, which is not great. It's not what we want to hear. Arsenal are sitting top of the table. Gabriel Jesus has been a big part of it. And I do think that between him and Thomas Partey, they're like the two players that you don't want to get injured. And I felt like, okay, Thomas Partey goes out of the World Cup with Ghana. Great. He's going straight to Dubai to go meet up with Arsenal for like kind of like a mini camp. Then like, boom, we get the Gabriel Jesus news and everything feels like it's falling apart. I watched the game, that Brazil played where Gabriel Jesus was playing. And I immediately, I can clock the minute where I knew he was injured because he had that one tackle. And then right after that, he was holding onto his knee and stomping down on the ground. And I was thinking, oh shit, that doesn't look good. It looks like a knee. But he didn't go down or anything like that. And I thought maybe we had evaded it. But the next day, they started talking about, okay, he's injured, he's out of the World Cup, and then it's gotten worse and worse and worse. I don't know what kind of knee injury it is, but it's something that may require surgery. And this is something that we also have to wait and hear from Arsenal, wait for him to get back to London and see, what they decide. Because what it feels like to me is that the initial prognosis was 3 weeks. And then if he gets surgery, it'll be 3 months. And so he'll probably go back to London and they may make a decision. We've seen this before with other players, not, players at Arsenal per se, but with other players that the club has made a decision whether or not to go ahead with surgery based on the timeline and how things are going. So we just definitely need to wait and see what Arsenal are saying about this. But this is definitely not the news that you want to hear. And away from Arsenal, I do want to say that I feel really bad for Gabriel Jesus because he can't make 2018 right in 2022. Because if you guys have been reading what's going on Twitter from the Brazilian fans about how they feel about Gabby Jesus, they do not like him. And I kind of get it because when you wear the number 9 for Brazil, you're expected to be a certain type of player. But he just did not get the opportunity to make things right. And so I feel bad for him on a personal level. He's 25, 26 years old. So who knows how many World Cups he has left in him. And so I'm sure he'll be gutted in that respect. But going back to Arsenal, what does this mean for our title hopes? He's one of our most important players. And how does Arsenal deal with such a big loss in a very difficult period where we're going into January? And I don't know if you guys have looked at our games in January, but it ain't pretty. So that's kind of where we are right now. Jordan Hill says, how did he get injured? It just looked like an impact kind of situation. And then all of a sudden, like he was holding onto his knee and like stomping down. So it looked like something like an impact. But what they also said was that he was already feeling something in that knee before he went to the World Cup. So it was probably an injury that was exacerbated by a tackle in that game against Cameroon. Let's see. Yeah. Yardy says, blow, wow, Gabby. Andy says, gutted that Gabby is injured, but we will be okay. Trust the process. Caleb says, I'm not taking this well. We can potentially fix this in the transfer market, but this is probably the worst news that could come from the World Cup. Bob says, hey, Jess, good to see you. Good to see you as well. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the worst possible news just because there's no like for like or anything that we would feel comfortable with. And we'll get into the Eddie and Nketiah stuff, but just in general, we don't have anybody like this in our squad. So yeah, this is definitely, and I think we do attribute the transformation of Arsenal from last season to this season a lot with Gabriel Jesus. So we have not seen this team without him yet. We've seen the team for about 3 or 4 games without Thomas Partey. And we won 3 and like lost 1, against Manchester United. So it's kind of like, okay, well, what is the impact of not having this player going to be like? We don't know yet. And so we're in the unknown right now. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of tweets like this one here. Obviously, like Tim Stillman, love him to death. I think he's like amazing. This is what he was saying on Twitter today. Realistically, I think that puts the title challenge to bed. To take on a team like City, Arsenal need to have everything to be perfect. And we couldn't even make it to game 15 intact injury-wise. We've still put ourselves in a great position to finish top 4. Remedy says, Gabriel Jesus is out for 3 months. It was so fun while it lasted, people. And, I do think that like there is a feeling amongst Arsenal fans that the title challenge is over. And I mean, to go from such a high of like, wow, we won our last game before going into the World Cup to one significant injury, making it so that we can't compete at all. I do find that to be maybe a little bit over. It really depends on how you felt about the title challenge prior to. So if you were somebody that didn't actually think we were in a title race, then yeah, an injury like this definitely just puts it like way out of reach. But for people that actually truly believed it, I am having a hard time coming to grips with the idea that this injury, although really a really big injury, completely takes us out of the equation. Over the last couple of months, all I've really heard is Gabriel Martinelli is the best left wing in the league. Odegaard is the best, number 10 in the league, or best creative midfielder in the league. Saka is the best right wing behind Mohamed Salah. Our defense is this, Saliba is that. Midfield is this, it's that. So do we not feel like that team can carry one injury, albeit a really significant one? I guess that's my question here is where, do we actually not believe the team was as good as we were saying? Or is the team literally being carried by Gabriel Jesus? If you go back to last season, I do think that we carried a couple of injuries to a certain point in the top 4 race. But when our back line became decimated and we had the likes of Cedric and Holding playing against Son in the North London Derby away from home, we didn't quite have the midfield. We didn't quite have a striker. That's when the injuries started to really feel like they were impacting what we were trying to do. Whereas just a couple of games before, went away from home to Chelsea, played Manchester United at home, went away from home to West Ham, and we were still able to get through that difficult period. So I want to know from you guys, do you feel like this is such a huge injury that it completely obliterates all of our chances of maintaining a title charge? Or can this team carry an injury, even though it's such a big player? That's what I want to know from you guys, because the stark contrast from, oh my gosh, we can do it, to, oh my God, it's over, I think is almost, for me, it's a little bit like, wow, so you don't actually believe in Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard, because basically what you're saying is that they can't maintain it without Gabriel Jesus. And I'm sorry, but like, if you actually believed we were in a title challenge, you must have counted in injuries to significant players. Injuries don't, like the El Neni injuries and stuff like that. That's one thing, but it's very difficult for me to believe that you believed in the title challenge, but you also believe that we wouldn't get any injuries, as if you haven't been an Arsenal fan forever. Any Arsenal fan ever knows that Arsenal get injuries. Do you know what I mean? And most teams that go into title challenges have challenges along the way. They have to deal with significant players out. They have to deal with, you know, uh, form dipping in and out, difficult parts of the schedule. So how could you have thought that we were going to win the title or we were in a title race if you did not actually, actually count potential injuries? That's kind of where I'm a little bit confused. Ash says, facts, Jess, one injury is all it takes for the title challenge brigade to drop their ass. Weird. I get that it reduces the chance, but to say it's over is wild, especially because we have not seen this team play without Gabriel Jesus yet. And I know that it won't be the same. We'll get into the Nketiah conversation. It won't be the same. But we have a January transfer window ahead of us. We have players like Saka and Martinelli, who some of our fan base have elevated to the, Salah levels of the Premier League. So how can they not carry some of this and get us, I know do you guys know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand how our team can be so good, but yet and still can't carry an injury, albeit being a very big one. Ash, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, important to remember, we won't miss Jesus's goals. It's everything else he does. If we can buy a winger forward to provide the same, it's not over. That's interesting. Yeah, it is more than the goals. Like, it definitely is more than the goals. And it's about, what does Gabriel Jesus actually bring to the table? And what it really is, I think, is he scares the opposition. That's one thing. And then it's like his creativity. He's really good on the ball. He can drop in and also like link play and stuff like that. And then it's his relentless pressing. Matt G says, we can't panic. The other players have to step up. Yo-Yo says, ye of little faith. The race has barely begun and people want to throw in the towel. I agree. Masach Phillips says, that is where the January transfer window. I mean, it's true. Like, and this is, I mean, there's also pressure on the Cronkies to make sure that, they make sure that they bring in a player. I don't think we can go into this transfer window and do it has to be the perfect player at the perfect price, this and that. We have to, like, I get that from last season. I don't actually feel like we need to bring in a striker. I just think we need another attacker. But I think perfect time, perfect place settings is kind of beyond us now, because we've lost such a big player in Gabriel Jesus at this point. And what we did see, we would have gotten Douglas Luiz had Aston Villa wanted to play ball. We did see that at the end of the summer transfer window when El Neni went down, that felt like it was too much to probably bear. We got through it, but the club was willing to press the panic button and go into those last hours of the transfer window to try to get somebody. If Aston Villa had wanted to play ball, Douglas Luiz would be an Arsenal player right now. So we do know that when the club feels like they're in a position where they need to fill that position, they will do it. So that gives me some faith that they will, make sure that they bring somebody in. It's especially because they were already talking about it prior to the injury. Caleb says, I agree that it's premature to rule out the title chances. We are 5 points clear with a great team. We have January coming up to add to the squad quality. We're still in pole position. Navar says his pressing ability. I agree. Let's see. Sanjeev says, I knew it since the beginning. Something like this was going to happen. This World Cup is a curse for Arsenal. Our good players is still in this tournament. Yeah, I mean, our good players are still in the tournament, but a lot of teams' good players are still in the tournament. So I do understand that. Like, I understand that it's like, okay, well, this is not ideal. It's not, you kind of maybe thought that something like this would happen. It's confirming your worst fears. But at the same time, like, I just don't believe you can be title challengers without expecting challenges to come. You don't win the title by everything just going perfect. You do need some luck. But I think we've had quite a bit of luck up until this point to get us to 5 points clear at the World Cup. If you don't agree, let me know. But I do think we've had quite a bit of luck up until this point. Not like we don't deserve to be where we are, but we've had luck with injuries, luck with the schedule, luck in this way. So if you thought that we weren't going to have any sort of challenges going into the back end of the season, where have you been? Like, I just don't understand. So moving forward, like one thing that I do want to talk about is like history repeating itself. And this is something that I saw on Twitter and I wanted to pull it up. So this kind of does remind me of the 2007, 2008 season where I think they named this team like the team that should, or the team that would have been, or whatever. And like, obviously, like I'll read a little bit of this to you. The 2007, 2008 season was the 110th season of competitive football for Arsenal. And essentially, like, the club ended their Premier League campaign in third position, having led the table for 2/3 of the season. So even further ahead, 2/3, we're not even 2/3 in, we're like a third in. And that team led the table all the way through like 2/3 of the season. And then kind of had a very similar situation happen where Robin Van Persie got injured. So 23 appearances, 9 goals as Arsenal's first choice striker following the departure of Thierry Henry. Van Persie was sidelined for 2 months in October after picking up a knee injury on international duty. This sounds very familiar. Following a comeback in December, he suffered a reoccurring injury that restricted his appearances for the remainder of the season. So I do believe that this is where a lot of the here's history repeating itself. This is where we're coming back to. We've seen this movie before. I looked at the team. I do think that the team was still strong, like, because I wanted to remind myself of 2007, 2008. There was players like Fabregas who also dealt with his own injury issues. You had Kleb, you had Rosicky, Kolo Toure was back there, Gallas, whatever you think about him, he was a quality player. Bakary Sagna. So it's not like that team was dead. The team was just not able to withstand not having their talisman with them. Now, I do think that that team was different. That team did not share the goals as much. Van Persie was very much like a central figure in the goals. And what I like about the team that we have now is that the likes of Saka, the likes of Martinelli, Odegaard are all pitching in with goals. And you've seen them do that since October 1st when Gabriel Jesus actually stopped scoring goals. But there is a little bit of history repeating itself, your talisman going down early on in the season after leading, and then it came after international duty. So I understand where a lot of that frustration and almost like trauma, PTSD is coming from. But I do think we have to fast forward some things and remind ourselves that we're in a different position now. And we're also, I think, in an era of Arsenal where I believe that they will probably bring in somebody in January to make sure that we don't like really kind of like fall down the table without having Gabby Jesus here. Yo-Yo says, still can't forget back-to-back away games to Stamford Bridge and Old Trafford to stay ahead. Let's see. Caleb says, don't forget the Eduardo injury that ruined us even more than RVP getting injured. Sanjeev says, because Jesus Arsenal is at the top now, without him, it seems like ordinary Arsenal. I feel like here's my thing, you guys. Like I want to go into this just a little bit more, because I think that this is important. I feel like stuff like this, and this is no offense to you, Sanjeev, like you're more than, entitled to your opinion. But I feel like saying like it's ordinary Arsenal without Jesus to me is almost like a slap in the face to the other players that, excuse me, that we do feel like are at the top of their game. I understand that like he's a pivotal piece of why we feel like we've transformed, but it's not like Saka and Martinelli haven't improved. The midfield of Xhaka, Odegaard, and Thomas Partey are exactly the same as the midfield that we had last season, but they've definitely went up a level. Xhaka's went up a level, Odegaard's went up a level, Thomas Partey's playing out of his skin. And so I understand that the level might go down and it won't be the same. But ordinary Arsenal feels like what you're saying is that nobody else has improved and we're basically being carried by Gabby Jesus. And I'm not sure that that's what I believe. Like, I'm not sure that I believe that this team will not play the same level of football that it was playing before without Gabriel Jesus. We just won't have that piece. I know he's super important, but I almost feel like that's a slap in the face to some of the other players. And I would be cognizant as a fan, not saying that you shouldn't do this, but of putting that type of messaging out there, especially online, because the boys see that and like you know, like I wouldn't want to see like, okay, it's just ordinary Arsenal without Gabriel Jesus. Like, what am I? Again, Gabriel Martinelli, a player that a lot of Arsenal fans feel like is the best left wing in the league. Saka just behind Salah. Everybody thinks that Thomas Partey is the best DM in the league. Granit Xhaka is having his best season of his life. Odegaard is our leading scorer, by the way. So it's kind of like, you know, like what are we actually saying? We don't actually believe in this team. Like that's what I feel like what we're saying, because it's not just about the bet. Like it's you have to have counted on Thomas Partey or Gabriel Jesus missing out at some point. I know I did. So when I thought like, okay, we probably won't win the league, but we will probably challenge and like stay near Manchester City, I thought that this team, even without some of those players for some point, like for a couple of weeks, months, whatever, could still win games. So that's, I feel like it's just, you know, it's a little bit like, damn, like, do we actually believe in these boys or not? Let's see, New Dawn Games, who I haven't seen in a while, says, don't forget we've won all but 2 games in the last 9 without Jesus scoring. Let's see. Thab says, Saka above Salah this season for me personally, I think will be fine. That's how I kind of think. I think we'll be fine. It won't be the same, but the boys are definitely going to have to step up their level. They're going to have, I think this is actually more of a mental thing than anything else. Like the other players have to not allow this to be a reason why they don't stay at the top of the table. BX Gunner says, who does what he does? No one else filled his shoes. Yeah, we don't have a like for like situation, but I just want to like remind people that there's been other teams in the league that have sustained, you know, absences from their players and haven't dropped their level that much. So even though Eddie, who we'll talk about in just a second, doesn't have the same level of technical ability, I think that's the main thing that he doesn't have over Jesus, is he doesn't have the same technical ability. So he's not going to be, the ball's not going to be coming out of the air and he's going to be able to like cushion it behind his leg and then turn the defender. He won't be able to do that. But can he press? Yes. You know, can he be a nuisance? Yes. And Eddie Nketiah, like we'll get into it, but I think it is like last, let me get the stats. We'll go into it right now. But I think we have Eddie when he plays with the Europa League team and Eddie when he plays with us, and we don't give him enough credit. Not saying he's the best player in the world, but I'm saying like you do have to give him some credit, right? So let's talk about what we do have. We'll talk about Eddie. So I think this is kind of like, let me move myself over here. I know it's like, what are you doing? Okay, let's move myself over here. So Eddie, I think this is where a lot of like, okay, we need to buy a striker. It's because Eddie's not good enough, right? And I have had like my fair share of say on like how I feel about Eddie Nketiah. I do think that when he's not starting and not playing with the first team, he tends to be a little peripheral. He doesn't really play at the same level, but at the same time, like what do you expect? Like you're not playing with Saka and Martinelli, you're playing with like Marquinhos and Reece Nelson. There's definitely a difference in quality there. And I just want to pull this up. And you guys could let me know in the comment section how you guys feel about Eddie Nketiah, and if you think he can deputize for a certain amount of time. But I'm just finding the tweet, you guys. Sorry. I don't know where it went. You know when you tweet something? Okay. Eddie Nketiah has scored 5 goals in his last 7 Premier League starts. So I think basically what that tells you is like he needs quality around him, and I think he needs a run of games. And you know, we've spoken about this before, run of games. And I'll give you another example. So the World Cup, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been watching the World Cup, right? Portugal, Brazil, and France's B teams all lost. All lost. You looked at them on paper and you thought, great teams. All of their B teams lost. Why is that? Because when a group of players that have never played with each other before play together in games that don't really matter that much, you tend to get a drop off, right? But if you take pieces of those B teams and put it into the starting 11, they tend to look better. That's pretty much like a normal thing. Eddie Nketiah having 5 goals in his last 7 Premier League starts, for me, tells me that he can score goals in the Premier League with the starting 11. What we can't have is Eddie Nketiah and Sambi and Rob Holding. That's what we can't have. We can't have Sambi, El Neni in midfield, and Cedric at right back, and Eddie Nketiah. That's too much for the team to carry. But Eddie playing with the first team and getting a run of games and can be a decent striker. Is he going to be on Gabriel Jesus's level? Absolutely not. Gabriel Jesus is basically a world-class player. But can he do a job? I think so. I think he can. But again, this is all about mentality and the team not letting something like this take them into we can't do it. And this is also about Eddie Nketiah stepping up to the plate. He is somebody like Sambi that have been vocal in the past about needing games, needing to feel important, blah, blah, blah. And what we saw, like with Sambi, we weren't really getting, great performances when he did get to start or whatever. It was just like he was just there. Eddie, I expect more from. He knows the English game. He's been at Arsenal for a long time. And I do expect more from him than I would expect from Sambi. But I want to know what you guys think, because I know that Eddie divides opinion, but the wages that he's on, the contract that we gave him are pretty much a confirmation that we're not going to go out there and buy a striker. So the idea that Vlahovic is coming in January, Morata, these guys, they're not coming in, so what do we feel about Eddie? James Bond says, morning, Jess, why did you change the name of football from football to Arsenal? Huh? Morning, Jess, why did you change the name from football to Arsenal? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Say, go more into detail about that, because I don't really understand the question. Vamsi says this is his chance to step up and show his 100K worth. I agree. BX Gunner says the quality of the team is rising too fast for Eddie. We need better. Thab says exactly that. The team can handle swapping one cog, and call me crazy, but I'm looking forward to Eddie time. He's no Jesus, but there's something exciting about the underdog story. There you go. Oh, she knows. Did I change it? It's She Knows Arsenal. I don't know. You guys confusing me. Okay. Chantel says, I think it's going to be a full team effort for us to be able to continue to compete with the other top teams in the league. Eddie and Reese are definitely going to have to step up. I don't even know if James Bond says she knows football to She Knows Arsenal. No, I hear you. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. But like, I don't even count Reese Nelson in this, because it's going to be Martinelli and Saka. And I do think that we're going to bring in another winger. And we also have to remember that ESR is also coming back in. So we will have some options up front. And so, like, I get it, but I don't know. I just feel like if we thought the team was as good as it is, then we should have more faith in the likes of Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard and those guys to step up. Let's see. Khalid says Mudryk left, Martinelli a striker. I've thought about that as well. Like, Martinelli playing through the middle might be the move, too, if Eddie doesn't work out. So at the beginning, when we come back, we have West Ham at home and Brighton away. Those on paper are a lot easier than the games that we have beyond that. Let me just pull up our schedule really quick as well, just so I make sure I get everything right. So essentially, we have West Ham at home, Brighton away, then Newcastle at home. We play Oxford United, and then we go into a really kind of like Tottenham and Manchester United back-to-back in January, then Everton and Brentford. And then it's not that bad after that. I actually think it's pretty good. So basically what we're looking at is being able to gauge whether or not Eddie has it or not against West Ham and against Brighton. Because for me, I don't want to go away from home to Newcastle. Because the thing about Newcastle is they have the best defense in the league on paper. They have the best defense in the league. And even though they're going to be at our place, they will be difficult to break down. And so if Eddie can't do it against Dunk, and those guys can't do it against whoever West Ham have back there, they usually have big guys back there anyway, then you might want to look at somebody like Martinelli through the middle and playing ESR off the left or something like that. Because the only thing I'm afraid of is Eddie unlike Jesus, sometimes can come off a little bit small and can disappear from games if the physical battle is too much. He can press you and get in and amongst you, but like against the likes of Dan Burn and Sven Botman and Fabian Schär, that's where I'm kind of thinking like, okay, how are we going to make sure that he doesn't get lost there? But if he can do well against West Ham and Brighton, then I think that we can move forward with him against everybody else. Now, if it's not working out, I do think you have the option of putting Martinelli through the middle and putting ESR off of the left. And I don't think that those are bad options. I don't think that that makes this look like horrendous. And I don't know if you guys watch Martinelli against Cameroon, but he was the best player on the pitch. And not only that, he was giving center forward for me. Like I was like, oh, that looks like a center forward to me more than Jesus. And that's not to be harsh on Jesus, but when I was looking at Martinelli, he looked like the center forward. So we have some options there. It's not going to be exactly what we want. Nobody loves their options except for like Man City. Nobody loves the other options. Like the depth is just not it. Do you know what I mean? Like when Chelsea go beyond Aubameyang, they're looking at like Broja, or Broja or whatever his name is. Like when you have to use these guys, it's not always the best, but that doesn't mean that everything needs to fall apart. Kayinda says, hello, Jess. Hello to you as well. Let's see. Jermaine says 100%. Thab says, Eddie's biggest problem, in my opinion, is his first touch sometimes let him down. That's very true. But then again, sometimes your first touch is indicative of like not being fresh and not being like not playing a lot of games. He's going to have enough games where he won't have an excuse. Do you know what I mean? And I think I felt like when he had more games like in a row, he kind of got better and better and better. So we'll see how it goes. But again, we won 3 games on the bounce with Eddie and Nketiah. It was not until Ben White and Gabriel were dealing with muscle injuries and Tomiyasu, and we had to play Holding and Cedric at the back, and we lost some of our distribution from the back, where it became a lot more like, damn, so we have to remember that we've been in these situations before, and I think sometimes we manipulate what actually happened and make it like different. Maybe your reality is different than mine, but that's how I saw it. I didn't actually think we were bad until the defense was riddled with injuries against Newcastle away or against Spurs away. Let's see. NT says we would just miss Gabriel Jesus for a couple of big games. That's true. So the big games are Newcastle at home, Tottenham away, and Manchester United at home. But again, I do think that we can beat Newcastle and Manchester United at home, even with Eddie and Nketiah, because you have your crowd behind you. You have your main guys with you. You know what I mean? And by then we will be midway through January. And if we haven't brought in somebody by then, I'd be really, really disappointed. So we have to just take it game by game. Chantel says Martinelli was easily the best player on the pitch against Cameroon, but I think that Brazilian team was willing to share the ball with him. He had to create a lot of his own chances. Yeah, there was an error. Like I felt like they weren't really trying to pass him the ball. Like I'm not gonna lie, like it felt like that to me. Like because a lot of them were trying very hard to impress, and Martinelli, I think by being unselfish and just playing his game, ended up looking a lot better than they did because they were so selfish. But Martinelli is here. You can't stop Martinelli. You can't not pass to him. He's going to happen regardless. Martinelli is already here. So yeah, I'm very excited about Martinelli post this World Cup because I do think that he's having his breakout season now. And I am looking forward to like ESR coming back into the team. So we'll see. Amira says, looking at the way we play throughout the 90 minutes, we'll see Eddie, Saka, Martinelli, or even Odegaard in the striker position at some point anyway. I believe we'll still score, but just won't be as easy. That makes a lot of sense to me. Big White Clock says the Jesus injury might not be all that bad. In 1990, Tony Adams went to prison and we won the league by 7 points with 2 deducted from the FA. It's a funny old game. I would be very cognizant and reluctant to paint this team with the same brush from further seasons. So not saying that you're doing that, but like I gave you guys the example of 2007 team, and saying like, okay, well, because it happened then, it's going to happen now. This team is completely different, with a completely different mindset, different coach. It's a different era. And I'm very reluctant to like say, okay, because it happened in the past to a different team, it's going to happen to this team. And then putting it on the internet for Saka and Martinelli and Gabriel Magalhaes and Ben White and all these guys to see. I don't. I want to believe that they can stay as close to Man City, or stay ahead of Man City for as long as possible. Like, I will push that until it's no longer true. I feel like it's important. Once you start to believe it's over, it will start to trickle down. Do you know what I mean? Let's see. Caleb says, when you're going for the title, every game is a big game. This is true. But I think you know what we mean. There's a difference between, a home game against Brentford and, Spurs away. I think you can understand the difference between that. Of course, every single game is important, but like, how we maneuver in that game and how we play and how we dominate will be different based on the opposition that we face. And so I do think like Eddie against Brentford at home will be a lot easier to like, do our game and play the way that we want to play versus Spurs away, Let's see. Jono says, Arsenal, we're never winning the league anyway. Your luck is about to run out. Arsenal aren't as good as the table says. Well, I mean, even like the XG tables say that we're pretty much as good as we're supposed to be. That there's nothing really out there, even statistically, that would say that we're not meant to be where we are. So if you can have like something to back it up, something more than just like, I'm a rival and I hate Arsenal, to back it up, then we can talk about it. But just saying we're not as good as what the table says without anything really to back it up doesn't really make sense. We have been as good as the table says. Even like projected points and all that say that we would be top of the table anyway. There's actually nothing out there that says that we wouldn't. We actually are as good as what the table says. But if you have like an actual argument with like stats or something just beyond like, I'm a rival and I hate Arsenal, then we can go with that. We can go with that. Let's see. Vamsi says, are we getting a DM in January? What's the news? Any idea? So let's kind of go into that. Let's talk about what we could possibly see in January coming down the pipeline. This is from LeGrove. He had posted, or he had tweeted this kind of after the Gabriel Jesus news came out, and said the transfer debate will shift from we should blow up our transfer strategy to sign a 50 million center forward in January, and it's not going to be on the cards. Winger and a number 8 or a number 6 should and likely be the focus for January in the summer, not a mega striker. Gabriel J is our guy. Eddie is the backup. So that moves me on to this guy here, because I actually agree with Pedro there. I agree with him. I don't think a striker is on the cards, even with Gabriel Jesus being injured. He's our striker, and we've spent the money already on Eddie Nketiah in terms of the wages and the contract. So what we're looking at is another attacker coming in. Now, that was a really good comment. Somebody put up and I put up. I forgot who said it, but most of the time, like Gabriel Jesus isn't even in the middle. Like it swaps all the time. Odegaard is through the middle. Granit Xhaka is through the middle. Martinelli's through the middle. So I don't actually think what we need is another central presence. What we need is somebody that can maintain our level of intensity and score goals, and offer a little bit of zhuzh to that front line and keep everybody sharp. Because I also think that there's an element of keeping everybody sharp. It's not just about, okay, well, if Saka or Martinelli can't play, who can we bring in? It's about knowing that this guy is like sitting there on the bench ready to take your spot. And I do think that there's players in the team that aren't really giving that energy. The likes of Reece Nelson, the likes of Marquinhos, they're not really giving the energy. But somebody like Mudryk, who feels like he's desperate to come to Arsenal anyway, is somebody that I do think will keep somebody like Martinelli sharp or keep Saka sharp. ESR also, because he's definitely somebody that could be a starter for Arsenal. So Mudryk, I wouldn't mind seeing him come to Arsenal. I mean, he's definitely different than the options that we have. Some people don't feel like he's ready or good enough, but I do feel like if he was going to like a Chelsea or something like that, they'd probably feel a little bit differently. But this is somebody that offers threat and scares the opposition. Personally, I don't think in January you need to bring in another nice player. You need to bring in somebody that's going to change the way people view your team, in terms of internally and externally. So I think about like when Spurs brought in Kulusevski, he wasn't a nice player. He was somebody that immediately put pressure on the players that were already playing in those positions and made the opposition think differently about Spurs, because it wasn't just shut down Son and Kane. Now you have this other guy coming in. Madrid is kind of like that. I think that because of his speed, his raw, like sheer pace, he's the exact type of player you want to bring in at the 60th minute when we're winning, away from home kind of thing, or somebody that you start, and they just scare the shit out of the defense. So I like him. My only thing is like, are we going to spend that amount of money on him? I'm not sure, but he is a player that I do feel like Arsenal like and Arsenal are interested in. And I'd like to get your guys' take on him. Is he somebody that you'd like to see come in January? I know he's not a center forward. I get that. But you could put Martinelli through the center and play Madrid left. You could also play ESR on the right. Like, you have different options that you have there. But adding another attacker seems like it actually has to happen this time. We were having debates about whether or not it was a midfielder or an attacker just a couple weeks ago. It's 100% an attacker at this point. I think we all kind of agree on that, right? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Vamsi says Madrid's physicality is just so good. I feel like he will kill it in the Prem. There's some players that you just know are going to do well in the Premier League. He does look like that kind of player because physicality, speed, and those things are like really a part of the Premier League. Like, like somebody like Dumfries, he'd be excellent in the Premier League. He's not super technical, but you could just see him, power and pace. Like, you could just see it. Hold on, you guys. Like, my throat is like dying. So just like a short story, ever since I've been here in Qatar, my throat has been tore up. Like, I can barely talk, like because the air conditioning is on as well. I might turn it off, but it's just like that air. Oh, it's killing me. It's killing me. As that says, I like the Depay loan deal, but he is not involved with Barca now. I like that. That's interesting. Lloyd says, I can already hear the critics. Arsenal title hopes are over now that Jesus is out for 3 months. He's not scoring goals, but offers us something different up top. What we need to do is go big. What does that mean? What does go big mean? Because remember, it's the January transfer window. So what you have to find is somebody that is so good that they're going to be like a big signing, but is also not imperative to what that club is doing right then in the league. So that's a very difficult dance to kind of like, it's hard to find that type of player. So you guys can let me know what you think that player looks like, and how do we make sure that we're not buying somebody for a lot of money that doesn't actually fill the long-term plan as well. Because if we do still miss out on the title, do you really want somebody hanging around that wasn't really a part of the plan anyway? Or you miss out on like a really good opportunity with a striker that actually really fits us, so that's kind of like what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? Yo-Yo says, all I want for Christmas are players who belong. The reinforcements must resemble Reyes, Eduardo, Alba, and hit the ground running. Need guys who play with swagger. I agree with that. They can't have a huge adaptation time, and I think Mudryk would be fine for that. Big White Clock says, why the worry? Arteta has recruited well. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I want them to sign whoever he wants. The only remaining question marks surround the ownership. Fair enough. And that's another thing, is that this will show us how bought in the Kroenkes actually are, because this is different than last season. Last season, I still think it was a mistake not to go out in January. But the way our summer transfer window went kind of made sense. We have an opportunity to win the league. Whether Gabriel Jesus is injured or not, that opportunity still remains until otherwise. So they have to go out and make something happen. And so that's where I'm kind of like, we'll see how much they actually are bought into this whole Arteta thing and what we're trying to do, because to not go out and bring in somebody would be a complete travesty, I think, at this point, knowing what we know now about Gabriel Jesus. I am dying. You see how you can't see my cup? That's weird. Mr. Real Talk says we should seriously consider bringing in Zaha. Again, this is a player I know only has 6 months left on his deal, but Crystal Palace, who are not really in the best state right now, are they going to let their talisman go mid-season? Again, you have to find somebody that is going to have an impact, but is also going to be able to leave their team in January, you know? Let's see. Rudo says our players are good enough, and everyone else, and everyone places more than one position and really well. James Bond says, Jess, I don't trust this Madrid signing. Why? But let me know why. Why do you think that? Is it because you don't think he's good enough? Do you think it's kind of like Bruno Guimaraes or, the types of signings or links that we've had before where there's been a lot of smoke and like nothing happens? Tell me like why. Like that's what I really want to know is why you think that. Do you know what I mean? As that says, Madrid is a little bit of a risk, but no transfer is risk-free. So I have to take it. Hopefully he adapts quickly as we need him. What's risky about Madrid? That's what I want to know. I have my thoughts on it, but what are yours? Let's see. Lloyd says, we need a player that can improve us from game one. The players we get need to fit our new way of playing as well, and makes a huge impact upon arrival. So that if that's what you mean by go big, does that necessarily mean that it needs to be somebody that costs a lot? Do we have to spend a lot on that player? What do you think? Because I also think we're really good at bringing in impactful players for good fees. So yeah, we have Madrid. We have the Danilo signing. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but there's some options out there. You guys have said Depay. I went to the USA-Netherlands game yesterday, and I have to say, Depay in person and Gakpo in person, it moved me. Like it did, it moved me. I thought these players are really, really good. And they're physical, fast, technical. And so we could use either one of them in January, even though I do think Gakpo ends up at Manchester United. But seeing them in person did kind of change my mind on them a little bit. Azat says, the risk is he's from the Ukrainian league and doesn't speak English, unproven and needs adaptation. These are the risks, in my opinion. Fair enough. I know some people will be like, but we've seen him in the Champions League. But that is kind of like a different vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like the Champions League is a different vibe because you're playing in a tournament setting day in and day out against the level of opposition that you play up against in the Premier League. Could be a little bit difficult for somebody like him. So yeah, I mean, that is a risk. Big White Clock says, is the Dessa, oh, I'm not going to say that, you guys. Smart Cookies says, even if we bring in a suitable replacement, it won't happen on the 1st of January. It'll take weeks. Yeah. And that's why we kind of spoke about at like the top of the show, what we could do with what we already have. Kind of analyzing Eddie Nketiah and the other options that we have, which aren't much, but we do have some options. And can we get through those first couple games until we get to January, until we get somebody in there? And I do think in general, like I do believe Eddie Nketiah will get time up top regardless. So we've already kind of spoke about that, but that we still need another attacker. And so I get what you're saying that like we still have games in between there. So yeah, we went through that part as well. Colombian says, Madrid speaks English. He conversed in English with Ben Jacobs. I'm not really worried about the English thing. I'm more worried about playing. I think can he adapt to the way that we play in the league and playing up against really good defenders day in and day out? Is he a pace merchant? Has he peaked so quickly and Shakhtar wants so much money and then we'll get him and it'll be kind of like a Pepe? Those are my thoughts and feelings, even though I think he's really talented. And if that's what we got, that's what we got. Do you know what I mean? And he says he's young with no Premier League experience. We need him to adapt right away. That's the risk. I like him, but not sure he can make an impact this season. Depay could be a good squad player. Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. I hear that 100%, so those are definitely like good points in terms of no Premier League experience. You want somebody to hit the ground running. I look at somebody like an Antony, who came to Manchester United from the Dutch league, which I think the Dutch league is also a really weak league, probably not as bad as the Ukrainian league, but that's just me just off the top of the dome, right? Who came in for a big fee. And even though he's still adapting, I think that he did add something to Manchester United because he had the goals. I think he has like 3 goals, so far. And he's been kind of like injured since then. So I do think you can still have an impact, and I think you can be adjusting and also have impact at the same time. I don't think it's one or the other. So if you bought in Mudryk and he was a little bit raw, like even like Nicola Pepe, like even though he was raw and didn't adapt as quickly or ever, it's not like he didn't have some sort of impact. So if Mudryk is somebody that Arteta feels like he can work with, I still feel like even though he's maybe needs to adapt, because he has an eye for goal and he's somebody that has that sheer raw talent, he could still have impact, even though he's not the finished article or perfect when he first comes in. But it's just a matter of if he never adapts. And that's always a risk. And it's top of mind because of what happened with Pepe. I totally understand that. J-Can says, Arshavin came in January and had a good impact. Balogun says, Depay is lazy. If he's not scoring, he's terrible off the ball. Mudryk is young, aggressive, and fast. Get him, get a DM as well. Could be a loan, doesn't matter. Kesha Momo says the difference between him and Pepe is the manager actually wants Mudryk as opposed to Unai Emery, who wanted Zaha, but the owners influenced the Pepe deal. I agree. And that's kind of like my overall point with this is that you can be adapting and have impact at the same time. Like even like Luis Diaz, like he came in, like there's some, like he came in and he hit the ground running. Kulusevski hit the ground running, but there's players that don't hit the ground running, but still have some impact. A good template for that would probably be somebody like Antony. So, wouldn't be a bad option, and we're also looking at, I also want to reiterate this, you guys, and kind of like end on this, this thought here is that we still have not gotten a full picture of what's going on with Gabriel Jesus. They're saying that it could take 3 months, but I also am very reluctant to, because the first reports were 3 weeks and the next reports were 3 months, and they're coming from Brazilian, the Brazilian media and stuff like that, that I'm just kind of like willing to wait and see what Arsenal say, if they actually make him go through the surgery or not. We haven't really gotten any clarity on that. And I'm a little bit reluctant to go into full spin out mode because I know the media likes to paint the darkest outcome, especially when it comes to Arsenal. So I just want to like wait and see, because he could come back earlier. We saw like El Neni came back earlier. Granit Xhaka came back earlier. So he could come back early. We just need to like chill, but there are going to be some games, regardless of the true outcome from the scans, where Arsenal are going to be playing without Gabriel Jesus. And if you thought he was going to play every single game of the Premier League this season, I do think that was a little bit, maybe, a little bit like best case scenario, you're trying to think with the most positive outcome. He was always going to be out for some period of the season. So we have to see what these other players have. And for me, we're not in a title race if we can't carry an injury. That's how I feel about it. Like, we're not in a title race and we're not a title challenging team if you can't carry an injury. I'm not saying 3 or 4 big injuries to key players. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, if God forbid, like Thomas Partey and Jesus were out, Saliba, then yeah, my thoughts would be different. But one injury up until this point, I'm thinking I have enough faith in Martinelli and Saka and Odegaard where they can get us through a difficult period. Will we be at the top the entire time? Maybe not. Will we drop points? Probably. But the idea that it's just like over makes me really question the people that were just a couple of weeks ago saying that like we were definitely in a title race. We had definitely have a chance, and then did an about face so abruptly because of one injury. Can't tell me Saka is the best right wing and Martinelli's the best left wing and our defense is the best and all this kind of stuff, and then feel like one injury means that it's just done, you know? True Gunners TV, thank you so much for your super chat. Says title race is over if we don't buy a striker in January, regardless of Jesus being injured or not. Not going to be interesting to see. Not going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. Jesus being injured or not going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. So yeah, I hear that. I think there's a lot of people that feel like a striker needs to come in, but I also feel like, and maybe you're not like this, but a lot of this is residual from maybe not really wanting Gabriel Jesus in the first place and not being bought into Nketiah in the first place, right? So for me, like nothing has really changed for me. I still think we need an attacker, period, but we're not going to bring in a striker. Gabriel Jesus is the guy. We gave Eddie Nketiah 100 bags a week. So I think we just need to bring in somebody else that can operate in those front three positions and give us the same technical quality and intensity that we've been playing with. ESR is also coming back, so we have to take that into account. But bringing in a Vlahovic in January or whoever, whatever striker you're thinking of in your head, it's not going to happen. The striker is not happening. An attacker will happen. And again, we just have to work with what we got. The best teams adapt. If you can't adapt, you're not a good team. Sorry. Yo-Yo says, until Arsenal speak on it, then it's just speculation. Let's hope it's not a Tomiyasu type issue from last season. I agree. Tudor says Arsenal fans are reactionary. Yeah, Arsenal fans, we tend to be a little bit on the, and I've been on that end before. So like I've been in the seat of like sitting in front of you guys saying like, it's all over, it's all over. But what I've seen from last season to this season, in terms of this team's mentality, the way we play, I do think that we can sustain this for a certain amount of time, but we do need to bring in somebody else and the team needs to rise to the occasion. It's all about mentality for me more than the talent. You know, I think last season was about, a lot of it was about mentality as well. We just didn't have it. James Bond says, big up yourself. Just keep doing what you do. Thank you so much. Jordan Hill says, it seems like he's gone through with the surgery. I don't know. Like, here's the thing is like, we haven't heard anything from Arsenal. What we heard from the Brazilian media is that he needs surgery and it's going to take 3 months and he's going back to Arsenal. But the Brazilian people said just a couple hours before that it was 3 weeks and he didn't need surgery. That kind of leads me to believe like, let's just wait. You know, he may still need surgery, but I would just wait, you know, to see what Arsenal say, because he'll get back to Arsenal and sometimes they make decisions on whether or not you get surgery based on, you know, how they feel about managing it and stuff like that. They have to get to their own physios and things like that. Lloyd says, Jess, you're absolutely right. If a kid was linked with City or Chelsea, people would be saying something different, but it's Arsenal, so it's going to be, he's not proven and it's not there yet. Let's see. Liam's asked, Jess, who do you think will get top 4? Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool and Spurs. I still think Liverpool will come back. I will never count them out again. Like, they will come back. I think they will have a good second half of the season. Truth DM channel and website says, we forget that last season we lost Partey and everything fell apart. That's not true. That's not true. See, this is, again, we make up like, so the way it actually really happened is we lost Thomas Partey against Crystal Palace. We lost that game, but he was there. And then we had 2 games where those were more than winnable games against Southampton and Brighton, and we lost those. Those were not because Thomas Partey were gone. That's because we didn't have the mentality, as far as I'm concerned. There was nothing about those games where I felt like we could not win them. It wasn't until, and then we won 3 on the bounce. Or we beat Leeds, we beat West Ham, we beat Manchester United, we beat Chelsea. This is all without Thomas Partey, mind you. And it wasn't until Ben White was out, Gabriel Magalhaes. I still feel people like forget this. Gabriel was playing with half a hamstring. He was not fit, and neither was Tomiyasu. We played a hurt Gabriel, a hurt Tomiyasu, and no white, and we were playing with Xhaka and El Neni, and we know like they in like difficult circumstances couldn't do it because also like the back line was not good, and then we had Eddie and Nketiah. So we were actually able to win games without Thomas Partey. It wasn't until it was like layered in with additional injuries, and this is why we actually also have played the season without Thomas Partey. So again, like you guys, we played games this season without Thomas Partey, and we're still fine. So it's about how many injuries do we have at a certain amount of time? What injuries are they? If it comes down to it, and it's Nketiah coming in for Gabriel Jesus, and we have to play without Thomas Partey, and one of our center backs go down, then my whole opinion on this will go down, or will change. But if we could, without Thomas Partey, beat Manchester United, Chelsea, West Ham, and Leeds, then I'm looking at them Southampton and Brighton games like it wasn't really about losing Partey. It was about not having it up here. That's really what it is. And I think we play too much attention to starting 11. It has to be that group. It's about, can the group that actually goes out there, can they do it up here? So I don't think it's just about Thomas Partey going down. Yes, we missed him, but we played this season without him and everything didn't fall apart. So I'm kind of like confused. You know what I mean? But yeah. Big White Clock says Partey, Tommy, Tierney together meant we didn't have enough quality. Palace were great at the Emirates last season. Was no surprise when we lost away without those three. Dab says we've played with both first choice sixes out for 3 games and we're still top of the league. I mean, I know it's going to be more games than that, but I do think we have to take that in consideration and make sure that we don't just like, I do think that like this is what we do. So last season, the season came down to Thomas Partey getting injured or not buying somebody in January. Like those are like the two that people usually like use. It's one or the other, but it's actually like layers of issues that happen at different times. And so, yeah, or not having a striker, but it's layers. It's layers for me. And I'll just end on this. I can't sit here and say that I think that most of our team has improved, that we have an excellent back line, that we have one of the best midfields in the league, like Martinelli and Saka are some of the best wingers in the league, and think that because Gabriel Jesus is not there, that all of a sudden they can't win games. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And again, if Thomas Partey was the reason why the last season fell apart, then how did we win games when he wasn't there? Because then we shouldn't have been able to win any games, So yeah, this was a good conversation, you guys. I'm happy to be back. I'm sorry it's been on like some more down news, but hopefully we'll get some good news soon. Yeah, I'm here in Qatar, so I'm here until the end of the tournament. And if you guys are not following me on TikTok or Instagram, you should be, because that's where I like update you guys on what's going on out here in Qatar. It's been pretty cool. I can't lie. It's been really fun time. So yeah, you guys can follow me there at I'm Jessica Black. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, sorry it's been on such, down terms, but I've really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. See you guys in the next one. Bye, y'all.